So what are we going to be looking at today? We'll try, as far as it will be possible, to look at data sources, validity, internal validity, and both external validity, reliability, and measurement, scales of measurement. These are important concepts that we also have to contextualize and understand them as you are developing your questionnaires and developing your interviews and all your instruments and tools. And once you then have an understanding, then it's going to be much more easier for you to relate them to the work that you do. So hopefully that's what will assist us. Now, before we really engage, I just felt, let me repeat this part, that we always hear about data collection. It's not a process that, so I'm saying when you are going to do data collection, you also have to be mindful and deliberate to understand that it is a scientific approach itself. So in other words, you don't just wake up and do it. You have to have an approach on how you're going to do it, because all these processes matter when you document your research report. Now, data and methodology are inextricably intertwined. When you talk about the methodology and the data, you need to understand that all those together are almost like, what do they say? When you've got a relationship that is so intertwined that you need to understand both of them. And when you are going to conduct quantitative research, which most of you are, you need to then, identify only a few variables that you are going to study. Because it's important that you must understand that in a research, you are studying variables. Now, then you need to collect that data specifically relating to that variable. So if you are choosing 2 or 3 variables, you then, as a qualitative researcher, you identify those variables and you collect data linked to those variables or related to those variables. So the methods of measuring each of those variables have to be identified, they need to be developed and standardized. Of course, you need to give considerable attention to the validity and the reliability of the measurement instrument. So the instrument that you're going to use to collect data needs to be measured so that you're able to say, you're able to demonstrate whether there is a validity and reliability in them. Now, we will talk about validity and reliability just now. But we all know that data is often collected from a large sample, which is presumed to represent a particular population, so that at least generalization can be made about the population. So if you get a bigger sample, which is representative of a population, there is more likelihood that you will then be in a better position to generalize your findings to the entire population. This is different if you then work from a qualitative research point of view, because there you tend to select few participants who might then just best shed light on the phenomenon that you're investigating. So the difference between the qualitative and the quantitative is that the quantitative use bigger numbers, whilst the qualitative is just fewer participants that you are selecting in your sample. So the sample size for quantitative is bigger, whilst for qualitative is smaller. So I hope I've now been able to tease you at the beginning of this meeting. So let me then listen to your story as to what is bothering you as students of research. I mean, you're here on a Friday afternoon, and surely you want to share or to ask or to gloat about some of the good things that you are doing, irrespective of the fact that we still have to talk about some of these concepts. So anybody wants to talk about the way in which they're approaching their their data collection, or any point that you feel you need to share with us in the meeting today, you can go ahead. Thabiso, where are you in terms of the data collection, or with regard to your proposal, with your entire proposal? Let me not limit you.
Thanks, Prof, for the opportunity. And yeah, Prof, for me, this is just a learning curve because I'm still on the journey to learn.
Okay, what do you mean you're on a journey to learn? You don't need to do anything from the proposal point of view in your journey.
I'll only embark on that next year, Prof.
So what is the expectation this year?
This year, for in fact, I hope you would enlighten me, Prof. All I can say is that I want to conduct research on social security.
Okay.
Yes.
But
So
what is the expectation? Is the expectation this year just for you to attend, not necessarily to do a proposal?
This year I'm doing a module on that because I'm actually doing a coursework and mini dissertation.
Okay, so the mini dissertation will be mini research in a way, right?
Yes, Prof.
Oh, okay. So what is your overall, are you attending for the first time?
No, Prof. I've attended before.
Oh, okay. So what will be your area that you feel, much as you are learning, you'd really want to understand better, or you find so far? No.
I want to investigate areas like social insurance, Prof.
Okay.
Yes.
So why do you want to investigate that?
I find them more like noble, and it's an area of study which I love.
I
I don't
see.
know, Prof, if it answers your question.
No, I do hear you. But let's hear what others have to say in relation to either the data sources or the work that they do in research that maybe, Thabiso, maybe can engage us further, because I want us to engage on research other than just me reading the principles. I see.
Thank you very much, Prof.
You're welcome. Elsada, you have been here yesterday and today. Maybe you had something to think about, whilst you're having the stress from other issues of life and studying. Or are you having a breeze? Not everything is tough in life, of course, I'm sure. What is your, Elsada, if you can hear us, what is your view on, and where are you with your research module or program? Elsada, can you, or you can't hear us?
Oh, Prof, sorry to come in, but she has written something on the chat.
Oh, is it? What did she write? Sorry, I didn't check the chat.
She says she doesn't have a mic, Prof.
Oh. Okay. Okay, but I'm sure she can hear us. I don't have access to my mic. All right. Okay. Okay. Let's hear. Is it Chifango? Chifango, can you hear us? And what is bothering you?
Good afternoon, Prof, and everyone. I am struggling to get some of the things that you are saying from where I am, because we are experiencing load shedding from 4 to 6. But with me, I just want to learn more, because I've already written my all chapters that are requested for masters. I'm polishing up my corrections with my supervisor, so that we can submit for editing, then I can submit for exam. So I hope that by attending this, I will learn more as well from you. So I'm having a challenge with network here and then, because we are experiencing load shedding. Thank you.
Oh, I see. Sorry about that. Shelley, you were here yesterday, and I'm just thinking maybe whilst you had an opportunity last night to digest some of the discussion or previously, you may have one or two things to share. What are the things that you'd like to share today with the rest of the students as part of our interaction? Shelley, can you hear us, or you can't hear us? Okay, that will be quite. All right, let's listen to Puluchi. Puluchi, are you able to hear us, or are you struggling also? Puluchi, are you able to hear us? So it's only Tabiso and Chifango who are able to hear. As I see now, the other students have been cut out. Puluchi, can you hear us? Oh, okay. Are you able to hear us, but you are not able to speak? Or what is the state of affairs? I see now you gave us a thumbs up, which is great. Are you able to unmute yourself and speak, or what is the state of play? Wow. This is going to be a very long one.
Hi, Prof. I can hear you from my side, only if the network is okay. But for now, since you started, I've been able to hear you many times. So I hope that this network won't give us problems up until we finish with the presentation today.
Yeah, but then the rest of the others, other than yourself and Tabiso, they're not talking to us, and we want to hear them. So I'm not sure. I mean, I saw a thumbs up from Puluchi, but I was asking the question. Okay, I see Roberta is able to hear us, which is great. Don't want to talk to yourself. Yeah, go ahead, Roberta.
Good day, everyone. Good day, Prof. I just joined about a minute ago.
Yes, what is bothering you in research? We can start with you, so you catch up.
In relation to the topic discussed today, or generally?
Just generally. Where are you? What did you like to hear more about? I mean, it's our platform. It's your platform to really catch up. You don't want you to struggle. If you can assist.
Okay, I forgot what it's called. Give me about 30 seconds. Do something else. I'll raise my hand just now.
Oh, okay. All right. So, but you're still listening, right?
There is something that's bothering me. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I haven't looked at my research for a week. I've been away. So I must just go back to where I stopped, because I was stuck somewhere. Thank you.
All right. I'm glad that you seem to be having your proposal in front of you as you are attending this tutorial, because there's no point in really listening to the concepts and you are not able to relate to the work in front of you. Nigo, welcome.
Thank you, Prof.
Yes, what do you have for us today? I mean, it's a night is a long time, and when you come back, you can really have one or two things that you want to share with us, as you did yesterday.
Basically, just want to listen up and see where I am in relation to my work. I'm in a bit of a noisy place here. Yes, so far I'm working on my methodology, but I've not yet received feedback from my supervisor for the things that I've done, submitted. So I think this session will help me basically just to see which direction I need to take.
Oh, I see. What are your your sources of data that you were going to use? We spoke about data collection and sources. What are your
my data sources are basically maintenance logs that are logged on a computer maintenance management system. So I'm extracting data that was logged in for a period of 12 months, and then you use it basically to analyze and understand the type of problems that are encountered within specific assets and the patterns of failure within it. So it's I would say it's purely quantitative type of analysis.
I see. So it's quantitative.
Yes, it's quite. Yeah, it's quantitative. Yes.
Is it primary or is it secondary data?
I would say it's primary data because it's the logging of the data. It's done. It's automated system. As an equipment fails, the logs are automatically logged, describing the type of fault, and then there's also a portion of it which is I would rather say it's maybe secondary because it's the feedback that we get from the technician, what they found out on the machine versus what the machine reported to the controller.
So how was the data captured?
Part of it is captured automatically. The system is automated. Every time there's a failure, the equipment itself reports a fault, which is then logged. It's only the feedback system that from the technician that is captured back into the system manually.
I see. So how is it then retrieved then?
That I retrieved directly from the system. It's historic data that is already logged and filed in the system. So that is retrieved electronically. I just select the specific assets that I want and set the time frame that I want, then download it from the system.
Oh, so if you set up your 12 months, the system will be able to generate information for the 12 months on what?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. I see you have already started downloading that data and retrieving it for possible analysis behind in the background. So we'll leave you for now, Nigo.
Okay.
Yeah, well, let's leave you for now. But I just want to confirm if everybody on this platform can hear us. I mean, there's no point really in continuing when other students are struggling. I mean, I see that there's a load shedding problem, but those that are on this platform should at least at the minimum hear us. Nogo, are you able to hear us? Shirley, I think you have been struggling, came in and now you're back.
Yes, I'm back. My battery was low. I just got home.
Okay.
So just put my phone on the charger.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Let's give you an opportunity to catch your breath. When you get home, you really have gone through a lot in the day. So yeah, we'll leave you. We won't bother you for now, but At least when you've got anything to say, just shout.
Okay. Okay, I'll do
Okay,
that.
Patricia, can you hear us? Okay. We just had a conversation now with Nigo on data sources. Now, this is also something that is very easy, but it can also be very technical. When you are going to do research, you need to know what are your data sources. And there's nothing wrong with what he has explained about the machine, but I got impressed when he said, look, you get 12 months that you can just slot into the machine and it will generate for you, data that is 12 months based. So I can already see that he's set up the parameters or the scope of how he's going to collect data. But the fact that he is clear about what is the data source, for me, it's helpful. Now, as researchers, you get sources of data in a different way. It can be interviews that you talk to people, videos, observations, documents, drawings, diaries, meetings, memoirs, newspapers, historical documents, and biographies. Any of this can give you data. It's a source of data that you can use. Observation, it's another technique that you can use to collect data. The primary data is what most of you as researchers are going to rely on. Because primary data does not only give you data that is more valid, most illuminating, but also more truthful, if you like. Because when you collect data, you collect it to deal with a specific problem. And of course, it is expected that you're going to use a procedure that is fit for that approach. So you can use data for the description of contemporary or historical attributes, where you just tell us how the COVID has affected, the economy of the country or any other factors. That can be just for historical attributes. Or for research or for replication of original research, that some research were done before, so you are doing it as part of replication, because replication is a scientific principle. If you go back to what we said is scientific realm that we work with, or just for reanalysis of the data, that there was data that was collected some years back, now you use it and you're reanalyzing it, or for advancement and for research design, that you want to advance a certain field of study, or for teaching and learning. So that's basically some of the reasons that you need data for. So again, we just say, look, another way of looking at primary data collection methods is that you're going to use questionnaires. And I'm sure most of you already have got questionnaires that they are going to use to collect data. And the design is what is more important, when you're dealing with questionnaires, how you design it, or the interviews or focus group or observation or analysis. So any of these, ladies and gentlemen, are very helpful when you are a researcher that you're going to collect primary data. There's nothing wrong also in collecting secondary data, which of course we know secondary data derives from primary data. So what are some of the secondary data examples? Is your official statistics, your records, your books, your magazines, your journals, your biographies. So that's also secondary data. But it is always advisable for research that you focus or you collect data from a primary source rather than secondary data. Now, secondary data does present some challenges, at times. One is that it might be difficult to locate useful data sources. Retrieval of that data might be a challenge. And you also required to evaluate how well the data meet the quality requirement of the current research and the methodological criteria for good scientific practice. Is there anybody on this platform who's doing research and they are going to use secondary data, and why? Anyone who's going to use are you all going to use primary data, or you're going to use both? Okay, from those of you who have already collected some data, which data did you collect? Primary or secondary? Do you think it's primary or do you think it's secondary? Okay, Tandy, what data are you going to collect, or have you collected, or you are collecting? Primary, secondary, or both?
Hello, Prof.
Yes, Tandy.
I will
Go
use
ahead.
secondary data. That is next year. I'm just listening this year. I'm not currently doing any research.
Why would you use secondary data? What is your understanding of secondary data, and why would you want to use it?
I would want to use it because it's available already. So I will just use the available information.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your understanding of or your preference of secondary data compared to primary data is that secondary data is available because it's available, readily available.
Yeah, that is, I'll get some of the information from the books, your journals, and unpublished like research papers.
So, but you can also do primary, or you don't want to do primary data collection?
Well, Prof, I will decide next year. Since this year I'm just doing year modules, I'll decide next year when I'm doing the actual research next year.
Oh, okay. You'll be a lot more focused on which one you wanna go with next year, because there will be expectation much more higher than this year.
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Patricia, are you at least now able to hear us, or you still? Elseda, where are you now in terms of just?
I'm with
Yes,
you, sir.
you are able to hear us.
Yes, loud and clear, sir.
Okay, where are you in terms of your proposal, your research proposal?
Methodology. It's a bit noisy here. I hope I won't be disturbing. That's why I mute the mic.
Oh, okay, I hear you. All right. Elseda, on validity of conclusions. Now, we did speak about it this yesterday, validity of conclusions. And I thought we could say it again just for completeness. Now, the first thing that I want you to understand is, what does it mean when we talk about validity? This is the extent to which an empirical measure adequately reflects the real meaning of the concept. It is the congruence between an operational definition and the concept it is purported to measure. Also, the degree to which a measure does what it is intended to do. So it is more concerned about producing credible and believable research findings. It is a term describing a measure that accurately reflects the concept it is intended to measure. For instance, an IQ would seem a more valid measure of your intelligence than the number of hours spent in the library. So in other words, if I want to measure intelligence, I use IQ rather than the number of hours that you're going to spend in the library. Because the number of hours that you're going to spend in the library cannot necessarily tell me how intelligent you are. So IQ, therefore, measures intelligence than the hours. So it's about the right measure for the right phenomenon. So validity has to do with how accurately the data that we have obtained in the study represent the variables of the study. So when you come back from a study with data in front of you, it must reflect the intention for which we are collecting that data for. So validity does not carry the same connotations in qualitative research than it does in quantitative research. So when you are dealing with quantitative research, validity is much more important than when you are dealing with qualitative research. So it doesn't have the same connotations in those approaches, but they're still important because it measures what you intend to measure. So this must not be confused with reliability. So in other words, validity must not be confused with reliability. We'll talk about reliability later. But let's look at what we call internal validity, because there are two types of validity. There's internal and external, or more. But let's just look at the two types. Internal validity, we say, is a must in research design. You have to have it in a design. This one refers to the extent to, it refers to what extent researchers can conclude that changes visible in the dependent variables are caused by manipulations to the independent variable. So in other words, when I see change in the dependent variable, I then ascribe that those changes to the independent variable. That's internal validity. The extent to which a design and data yields allow the researcher to draw accurate conclusions about cause and effect and other relationship within the data. That's internal validity. So researchers take precautions to eliminate other possible explanations for the results observed. So in other words, if I know, and I've got no doubt that the cause and effect or the relationship between these variables is as a result of the manipulation of the independent variable, then I've achieved what is called internal validity. So it is the degree to which the experimental design excludes alternative explanation. So I know for a fact that it is none other than this independent variable manipulation that the changes in the dependent variable have occurred. So I've got no doubt. So there's no other reason other than that which I'm explaining from my data in research. Then we have achieved internal validity. It's a phenomenon with which researchers infer that relationship between independent and dependent variables are not random, but causal. So if you look at the fire smoke scenario, if we then say we know without any doubt that the smoke is as a result of fire, that is internal validity. A process to make sure changes in dependent variables are due to independent variables, not other confounding variables. So in other words, I know that the reason why there was this accident is nothing other than the fact that perhaps there was an alcohol influence. Once you reach that point of the relationship between the accident and alcohol influence that is above limit, you have reached what is called, you have achieved internal validity. But if it could be, there's a number of other factors and they've not been eliminated, like speed, like the quality of the road, like, all those areas, then the internal validity is not necessarily achieved. Is there anybody who wants to really make this explanation a lot more easier on internal validity? Or how do you understand internal validity from these few comments I've made? Tabiso, what do you think on internal validity? What is your reflection on that? Who do you suggest, Tabiso, on internal validity? What is your when you come, what would be your understanding then as it is now? What is your view? You have a view. Okay, let's listen to Shirley. She must have been settled a bit now. Internal validity, Shirley. How can you simplify it for yourself?
Okay, let me try.
Please do. Go ahead.
Prof, I think it's the degree to which internal evidence or the degree to which researchers deduce that let me
Make it simpler. Simplify it for yourself. Like,
okay.
yeah, maybe if you put it in a simple way for yourself, what did you say?
It's the degree to which evidence from researchers supports a claim about a cause and effect, as opposed to external factors making those claims due to external factors.
Okay. What if is it simpler? Do you think you have made it simple? If I say that to some other people in this platform, do you think you've made it simple, Tavis? I'm sure you can make it much more simpler if you can. What do you think? How can you make internal validity simpler, just so that a man in the street can relate to it?
Okay, I will try as much as I can, Prof. Okay, our main focus would be the data. Yeah, so with the data, it is now when maybe myself as a researcher, I make claims that well, I'm trying, Prof.
Yeah, I think you are really trying, and I like that, because the principle is, if you can understand what it means, and you say you make claim that the dependent variable, the changes that you see in the dependent variable are as a result of the intervention related to the independent variable. Let's look at an accident. I was just trying to make an example of an accident. If we can eliminate everything else, and now we come to reach a point where we say the cause of this accident is because the driver was under the influence and over the limit. Is that internal validity, or is it not?
It's
Anybody?
it's internal validity.
So how do you say so?
Because because of the fact that we are not looking at external factors.
Such as what? What could be the other explanations?
Such as the environment, such as maybe the car itself, as you've pointed out earlier.
Okay, let's say I'm saying assuming we see an accident, and now we know the car is roadworthy, the quality of the tires and the quality of the road is fine, the lighting on the road is also okay, and everything else is fine. It means we have done what? We have eliminated other possible explanations, isn't it? We only know now that the reason why the accident was caused is not even speed, is probably because the driver was over the limit of. I'm saying once you can eliminate everything else, then you are able to make conclusions, which conclusion relate to saying we have got no doubt now that it is not about the roadworthiness of the car, is not about the quality of the road, is not about anything else, but more to do with the fact that you as a driver at the time were over the limit, and therefore this is the reason for the cause of the accident.
I
Does it
think
make sense?
I get it. It does make a lot of sense, Prof.
Okay. Now let's go to court. Again, I use this one quite a lot because I think the more examples we can try to use, the better. If you go to court, if anybody goes to court and is accused of having done something, and the judge sits there, listens to all kinds of evidence, basically is like getting all kinds of data, and then he comes to a point where he say, I've got no doubt in my mind other than concluding that this, you are guilty of this charge. That means beyond reasonable doubt. What does that mean? That means the judge is saying, I have eliminated all these other possible explanations that I can think about or have heard about. So I know now that there's a relationship between this crime and yourself. So there is some kind of a relationship between you as the person who committed the offense and the offense itself, and evidence or data before me points to you being guilty. Now, there the test is beyond reasonable doubt. That's pretty much how you can understand internal validity, if that makes sense. I see there's another Tabiso now that has joined. Tabiso, welcome. The other Tabiso, Raymond. Or is it the same Tabiso that was talking just now?
Hi, okay, thanks, Prof. Yeah, thanks. Welcome, yeah.
Yes, what you were just talking about internal validity. Did you catch it?
Not quite. I just logged in now, but I'll catch up. Not to worry, Prof. Thanks.
Okay. Let me go back to Thandi. Thandi, I know you said you are not worried now about all this because you'll worry next year. But at least for now, can you relate to internal validity concept? Because this is what you are doing. You're just getting the concepts at the moment.
Hey, yes, Prof. I can. Yeah, I'm grasping a little bit, but yeah, I did not catch so much. So.
Where did we lose you, Thandi?
Yeah, the internal validity concept, I've not really got the concept and everything, the understanding of it. I think I will need to revisit it and read a little bit.
Okay, let's go back to what I was saying about. Let's see whether we can relate to it. I'm saying here is a situation of an accident, right? Which is unfortunate if we talk an accident, but there's an accident. What can cause an accident, Thandi, on a road?
It will be like if two cars they collide, that can cause an accident, or if a child gets hit by a kite, that also can cause an accident.
No, what can cause an accident? I'm talking about the cause, not the accident itself. Remember, if two cars collide, is an accident. What causes that? Or if a child is knocked by, it's an accident. What can possibly cause that? What can possibly cause an accident?
Negligence of some sort.
Okay, maybe negligence. Yes, negligence of some sort, whether it's by the driver or the passengers or whatever. Yes. What else?
Or if a car has some fault, then
Car not roadworthy.
yeah.
Yes.
Or the driver is also at fault.
Okay, maybe the driver can cause an accident if there's issues around the driver. Yes.
I think those are some of the factors that can cause an accident.
Or maybe the road is not good.
Yes, like if it has potholes and it's
Let's say the road is not good. Yes.
Yeah,
Or maybe there's a poor visibility on the road, like maybe the weather is not that great. All those, right?
yes.
Now I'm saying if we know by way of an investigation now that it is not the car, the car is. Oh, Tandy, can you hear me?
Yes, Prof, I can hear you.
Okay. Now we know the car is roadworthy. So there's nothing wrong with the car. It's roadworthy.
Yes.
If we know that the road is good, in other words, it's a very clear, perfect road that we can imagine.
Yes.
Right? If we know that the visibility is great. Now it was during the day, there was a blue sky, the sun was shining, and the road was not slippery and all that. And we know it's not negligent. But the driver had maybe taken more, has sort of drank more alcohol on the day, right?
Yes.
We have now eliminated other possible causes of the accident. Now, what are we left with? We are left with the reason for the cause of the accident being the fact that the driver was over the limit in terms of alcohol. Do you get that?
Yes, Prof, I get it.
That then becomes internal validity.
Okay.
So in other words, it's not negligence, it's not the road unworthiness, it's not the poor quality of the road, it's not the poor lighting and everything else. It is because the driver was drunk on the day, therefore it caused. It's not even speed, for example. Do you understand what internal validity then has to do? In other words, you need to eliminate all these other possible causes for you to come to a point where you then say, I know for a fact that the cause for the accident is because the driver was over the limit.
Now I get it, Prof. Sort of, yes.
Now you get it.
Yes, Prof.
So when the judge is saying, I'm sentencing you to prison, you are guilty of an offense, he says the data or the evidence before me that I have evaluated, I've looked at, is nothing else, but it says to me that you committed that crime. I've got no doubt. When doubt is not there, that's almost technically we can relate to it and say is internal validity.
Okay, Prof.
But when there is doubt, like maybe there was maybe this other maybe this other driver was speeding. Oh no, maybe the road wasn't as good. Maybe there was negligence. That means you have not eliminated other possible explanations. That's what we're talking about when we say internal validity.
I understand now, Prof. Thank you.
Great. I'm glad that you do, because it sounded like you were saying, you know what? I don't have to understand it now. I'll understand it some other time. And I'm thinking, why? Why leave it for some other time? Anybody who still feel that they need an explanation on the internal validity, please raise your hand. But there are, what we're discussing right now, just a few minutes ago, are what we call internal validity threats. There are threats to internal validity. In other words, there are things that can bring about different explanation to a situation that we are talking about. There's something that's not right Am I still sharing the slides? Are you still able to see?
Yes, Prof is showing.
Oh, okay. Now, what are some of the internal validity threats? What are some of the things that if you don't take care of, they can bring alternative explanations to your research? When you do research, you want to tell us that there is a relationship between A and B, or A and B and C. Whether that is a good relationship, a bad relationship, a positive relationship, a negative relationship, doesn't matter. But that's what you want to achieve. Now, for you to achieve that, you need to look at what are the threats to my explanation of the relationship between the variables. One of which can be changes in the history of participants. So history can play a role. Familiarity with the experimenter, you as a researcher, there was a point that was raised yesterday about familiarity and the study conditions. Now, let's look at the history. The reason why history is a threat is that this one is any event that happens between first and second measurement that influence the outcome. Now, if I interview you now and I interview you 10 years later, or you interview somebody who was a teenager and they interview somebody who's an adult, over time, people gain different kind of perspective. So history can also influence your internal validity thread. Now, when I was young, you were young as a teenager, you may have had a particular perspective on certain things in life. And when you then take responsibility of being an adult, you then start to see things differently. That's history. So those events that have happened over the years can be anything that affect the results. So when I interview you today, you may actually give me a different answer than the answer that you would have given me 15, 20 years ago. Because over time, as I said, there might have been changes in policy, there might have been changes in weather conditions now, there has been COVID over the years. There's been poor performance by politicians over the years. You got disappointed in life along the way, got married, got divorced, and so on. So all those can be historical issues that when you go and interact with people, they may influence the way in which they give you your results are going to be captured. So as a researcher, you need to be mindful of that, so that you don't ignore the history of as part of the internal validity thread. The other thing that you can look at is what you call maturation as an internal validity thread. So when you explain yourself about the cause of the accident, you can also look at the history, or maturation can influence the results. Maturation as a process is that this process that changes in the respondents or the participants' actions are simply due to passage of time. So again, the passage of time can simply lead people to deal with certain situations differently. Right now you are a master's student. You are expected to behave differently maybe than the undergraduate student at a certain time. Over time, you may find that your understanding of certain concepts that you were dealing with at the undergraduate level are becoming more and more clearer. So changes in the participants' actions might be as functions of biology or physiology changes that occur to participants, including just people growing older or growing more hungrier or tired. So when you engage people that are now, they've become older, they may look at things and explain things differently. So that's maturation. It could be a problem, especially in a longitudinal studies where impact of an intervention is measured over a long period of time. Now, this is where things can be different. I spoke to Godfrey, he was 25 years old. And this is what he was saying then. I speak to Godfrey, he's now 35 years of age. and I speak to him when he's 45, then I speak to him when he's 55. The answers that he's giving over this period, may be quite varied because it is to do with maturation. So as he matures, and this is in a longitudinal studies, you need to understand that. This is one of the reasons why if you talk to people who voted in 1994 and you spoke to them in 2004, and you are now going to talk to them perhaps in 2014, you spoke to them in 2018, over the period of, now you talk to them in 2024, they might give you different kind of answers, which are different over the long period of time, because over time they got different kind of experiences, and so on. So it's important to understand maturation. The testing effect, this one indicates influence of taking tests one after another. It's called practice effect. With repeated test taking, sometimes people who are taking tests will obtain better outcomes, not because of the intervention, but because they will become more familiar with the test questions and the format. So if you do the same test and you do it over and over, you sort of just get an idea of how to spot the answers, because it's been given to you over and over. So that can also influence the results, of your internal validity, familiarity with the test, the instrumentation as well. Now here, it refers to having drifts in calibration of your measurement tool and the changes in scorers and observers that may impact the results of the measurement. So you are a stats SA, you send some people to go and collect data in different communities, and some other guys feel so hungry that they've not been given their stipends. It can also influence the way in which they collect some information. So it's important to understand that there can also be issues around instrumentation. So instrument effect is mostly commonly seen when different instruments are used in pre-test and post-test or administered by different researchers. So what happens here is we are a group of researchers, there's 4 of us, and we are all going to different communities to administer a tool. Now, sometimes because of the differences that people are, they may administer the tool differently. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just for you to know that you need to standardize the instrumentation. So in such situations, changes in outcome might be attributed to inconsistencies in the instrumentation. So I spend more time, you spend less time, somebody spend moderate time with the same instrument. So maybe to exemplify the instrumentation thread, what some teachers tend to give higher scores on exam than other teachers. So what you get is same test given. Now we've got more teachers that are more lenient, and we've got teachers that are more strict. So for the same test, you get better results. Somebody else can get, average result, and other people can actually do badly. So that is if an exam is graded by 2 teachers, So those are instrumentation challenges. Statistical regression. Here, participants with extreme scores at first measurement tend to move toward mean at the second measurement. Now, here again is, it's almost very interesting when you look at a situation where people compete. Those who go first, sometimes get either a raw deal or they get a best deal. So it's always interesting that they set the tone, and if they're excellent, it might be difficult for those that are going to come after them. Or if they're very poor, it might be that they're actually becoming a benefit and a bonus for those that are going to come after them. So this situation can be maybe explained in 2 factors, the statistical regression. A measurement always consists of true scores and a chance of events. B is in distribution of scores, there are always more scores combined around mean than around the size of the extreme score. So when we start, we may feel, okay, maybe we are generous or maybe we are too lenient. So this is another area that is important when you deal with people, because sometimes people are just generally kind, that they don't want to cause disappointment. Selection is another threat to internal validity. So here it talks to biases in selection of participants for experimental and control results. So when you select people, you may find that just in selection alone, your selection has biases. It is mostly commonly experienced at the data collection stage where already formed groups are compared. So when you go in and you say, I want two groups, you may find that the group differences as a result of selection bias can occur. Whether cognitive, affective, personality, and demographic variables, those that are more geniuses or those that like each other or those that are, more women and so on. So selection bias may occur, and the lesser bias, the high internal validity is achieved. So if you can have those that are selected with lesser biases, you're going to achieve a much, a higher internal validity. For example, if a researcher wants to investigate how an educational intervention can increase academic achievement, and you only choose participants from high achieving students, the intervention will most likely produce positive results. So if I come and I said I only look for students who have performed to this level, I'm more likely to get positive results at the time I assess the intervention. However, the reason for the positive results may be that the participants from high achieved schools are more motivated to learn than other schools. So if you're only going to go to get those ones, you may find yourself then dealing with only those that are naturally, intrinsically motivated to do this than the other students. So I hope this helps in you, ladies and gentlemen, understanding some of the internal validity threats that you can think about. I'm going to suggest we take a 5 minutes break, comfort break, and then we finish off and we go to the external validity threats as well. So let's pause here and then take a break. Do you think you can explain to yourself what internal validity is all about, at least to the extent that it may help you to understand it in the context of research?
Yeah, to a certain extent, especially because whenever you explain something, because I read a lot of articles, right? The similarity of how the context is explained makes it somehow difficult, but the minute you explain, then that's when it really makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it makes sense to you and you can really relate to it and it will help you in your research, we will be glad. That's all what we try to do in this.
And it's really appreciative, because also what helps, well, I'll speak for myself. What helps me most of the time is that, sometimes as you're going through your presentations, right?
Yeah.
What I do is I make myself some notes that say that, hey, this one I don't understand. I need to really get a full explanation or go through it again. So when the links are sent back to us, right, then one is able to really go into details, listening to you, even, fast forwarding, rewinding until you grasp the matter such that you can even explain to the next person.
Oh, great.
Yeah. No, well done.
Godfrey's doing a good job. Thank you. But we enjoy it when students are talking to us because concepts can be explained by all of us. All what we want is it must be a concept explained in the context of you telling us what you are doing so that you can move forward.
Absolutely.
So that you can at least use it in your research proposal. And
absolutely.
All what we want is that this must not be too difficult for any one of you to do research. Research must be doable by all of you because it's a continuous learning, and nobody can claim to know everything about it, but it's helpful when we look at situations that are real in your own studies. But thanks for the feedback.
No, you're
in-
welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Now we're talking about things that can threaten internal validity. We said it's history, things that have happened over time. It's maturation. When we grow older, we
Yeah.
become more appreciative and grateful than when we were younger. So it's important if you are going to conduct a longitudinal study to understand that when I was younger, I might have had a different perspective than where I am now. So hence I was using an example that if you voted in 1994, there was euphoria. Just the first time that Black people had to vote. Everybody was excited. They didn't know what to expect. Voting was a foreign thingy. Now came, the second elections, and everybody was like, okay, those who voted in 1994 were still excited, but maybe, not as excited as doing it for the first time. So in 1994, no Black person has ever voted. It cannot therefore be out of context when you analyze 1994 elections to understand that they were doing it for the first time. Now, if people are going to do something for the first time, the level of excitement, you will agree with me, will not necessarily be the same when you are doing for the second time, the third time, and the fourth time. So it is maturation that needs to be understood, that yes, it's not necessarily a bad thing that you've got those people who are now saying, you know what, I'm not going to do it because they've done it before, or I'm not going to do it because I got disappointed. It might be at a personal level, it might be at the group level, but it's important to understand where are you in terms of that internal validity threat. Testing effect, we spoke about it, that if you take something over and over, if you you attend this session over and over, later on you'll write, you know what, I think I know what this is all about. You kind of get familiarity with the discussion and maybe also with the answers, because now you get the answers, even before they are given to you. Instrumentation, the kind of instrument that you use as measurement instrument. If you and I were to go out and we administer the same instrument, yes, the result might still be relatively the same, but the way in which we administer the instrumentation matters. If I've got a very angry and upset researcher who's going to administer a questionnaire to a group of students at the university, and I also have another excited researcher who's going to administer it to another sector of society, it may as well be that that kind of personality also come across in the administration of the tool. Statistical regression, we all know, there are people who are extremely very kind, but there are also, people who are extremely mean. So sometimes when you look at the scores, you can tell that, is it average? Is it more towards the left? Which means, are these people extremely upset, or it is more towards the right, maybe where it shows a lot of leniency. Selection, again, we know when people get together, there are issues around familiarity, and me as a researcher, I need to be able to look at that and say, why are the same people moving the same direction? Women will get together, to do with familiarity at times, but also with other reasons such as affectiveness or personalities or just demographic variables. It's important to look at that and then say, okay, maybe I need to distribute them equitably or equally, so that I've got everybody represented in the group, especially if you are going to divide experimental and control group. You may want to have a balanced group. That's selection. The other area that can also influence the results of your study is what is called experimental mortality. Now here, what it means is that you can lose participants in different rates in your experimental or control group. For example, due to death or drop out from studies. Some people, die. Well, not some people. People die. Or people lose interest in things that you want to do with them. And of course, here we talk about students who can also drop out. So a high mortality rate can cause selection biases if mortality rates are differentiated within your groups. So if you've got many people who have died in one group, it may influence the results of your investigation. Results of studies will be confounded if mortality has a specific relationship with particular characteristics of either experimental or control group. Because you may find that in the group itself, you may have a peculiar character, that you wanted in either of the group. And if something happens to that character, it may, not necessarily that there will be no results, but it may affect internal validity. By the way, when we say internal validity, we don't mean that you cannot get the results. We just mean be aware and be mindful of those, so that when you don't get exact internal validity, you are still to justify the result. It's just a result of experimental mortality that are not able to 100% achieve the high internal validity. So there's nothing wrong in, even if you don't have internal validity achieved, you can still explain it in ways that make sense scientifically. Now here we're trying to use an example that hopefully maybe can clarify this experimental mortality example, but which I think it has already been clarified. If you want to investigate the effects of a class intervention on students' academic success, and you require attendance only for, say, experimental group, in the meantime, the control group might shrink, getting smaller, and only high motivated students might remain in the control group. So you've got two groups, experimental and control group. And the control group is shrinking. So in this case, outcomes of the control group will be influenced by the remaining participants' characteristics. So it's not that there is no control group, but it may just be that then you are left with whatever you are left with to decide what the outcomes of your studies are. Now that's internal validity, ladies and gentlemen, and the threat to internal validity. Remember, internal validity, if we explain it again, is to do with the extent that you, as a researcher, you can conclude that the changes that we see in the variable that is dependent are caused by the independent variable. So in other words, you are able to say, I have no doubt that the cause of teenage pregnancy in schools is due to the following. So you need to be very clear on that. We are not going to look at, again, I want to use that example we tried to use yesterday. When you look at teenage pregnancy, you are not looking at the relationship that teenagers have, sexual relationships and the HIV and all these other, health, risks that associated with relationship. You are looking at teenage pregnancy. So the variable is you must be a teenager and you must be pregnant. So when we look at internal validity, we are going to look at what is it that you say is the reason for teenage pregnancy to be either, because you might, in a quantitative study, remember we are saying looking at relationship, between variable, whether cause and effect or other kind of relationship. Either it's very high or it's moderate, it's concerning. So if you say this is the reasons, you need to give us reasons that are only limited to teenage pregnancy. What is it that you are studying? So when you look at internal validity, you will be looking at what do you say is the relationship. Now, the other issues that we are talking about were what are the factors or the threads that may influence your coming up with that conclusion. And you said you look at the history, you look at the maturation, you look at the testing effect, you look at the instrument that you are going to use, you look at the statistical regression, you look at selection, how you select the teenagers, you look at the experimental mortality. Those are factors that may influence the way in which your study reach some conclusions. On the other hand, when we then look at external validity. So remember, it's internal and there's external. Now, external has to do with the extent to which results apply to situations beyond the study itself. So here, we talk about conclusions that are drawn and can be generalized to other contexts. So now we know that these are the circumstances that you said, or these are the findings and the results of your relationship. And if your sample has been such that it's been representative enough, in other words, it shows that what we saw in the sample represent adequately the population of that you are studying, then we talk about external validity. So you can generalize because you have been able to select or to sample a population in a representative manner, such that every sector of that society or that population that you are studying is represented. So that's what external validity does. There are three strategies that can enhance the external validity. So in other words, if you want your external validity to be much more enhanced, you can look at the following strategy: a real life setting, a representative sample, and a replication in a different context. So if you use those three examples, those three strategies, you would have enhanced your external validity. Real life setting, where you interview people in their comfortable spaces, because when people are comfortable, you can't go to a park station now and you go to a taxi rank and people are rushing home. And you really say, look, I've got some questions that I want to go through because I've got a questionnaire. It's just about 10 or 15 questions. And a person wants to get in a taxi, they're worried about their own safety going home and so on. So a real life setting might be, take it home, fill it out, or I'll come and visit you at home if you don't mind, or in a workplace. So those are real life setting where a person is much more comfortable than when you just like, when you get in between a person, time and their own other life excitement that has got nothing to do with filling of a questionnaire. So those are the things that you need to be mindful of. A representative sample, we spoke about it, and a replication in a different context. So in other words, if I take your study in Johannesburg, in the CBD, with all what you have considered, and I take it to Kimberley, CBD, and with all this consideration, and I replicate it, probably get the same result. Then we're talking external validity. Now we will discuss the threats to external validity, but I just thought, let's for today be able to look at threats to internal validity, because they are much more important to your own conclusion, maybe to largely than your external validity. But I would also want us to have a chat a little bit on reliability, because there's one thing to talk about validity, there's another thing to talk about reliability. In most of the research work, journals, books, and stuff, please look at validity and reliability. Read about it. No research will not talk about how did you deal with issues of validity and reliability. So read about them, make them make it a habit that as a research student, you keep on going back and say, okay, what does validity, what does reliability say about this? So reliability entails the degree to which a procedure gives similar results over a number of repeated trials. So I do it now in the morning, I get the results. I do it during the day, I get similar kind of results. I do it in the evening, I get similar results. Then tomorrow, again, I repeat it and I repeat it and I repeat. So as I repeat it, I get similar results. What am I doing? Is about consistency, is about stability, is about repeatability of the results. So testing for reliability ensures that consistent results will be obtained in identical situations on different occasions. Now, this is where sometimes you hear people say, if you do the same thing over and over and over again, it is expected of you, that is reliability, to expect similar results. So in other words, if you look at the economic situation of the country, they said South Africans are not known to be savers. We are more consumers. We blow money. We love spending money. Now, the life is that if you are going to do that over and over, there's no way that you can at least accrue and start seeing savings. It's not possible. So it is reliability. If you do it and you do it over and over, it's consistency. So you're doing it and you're doing it consistently. But remember, it's different from validity, because validity is you measure what you said you will measure. But if you do that, if you measure that which you're going to measure, in other words, if you don't save, because that's what you are measuring, and you don't save consistently and repeatedly, that it's validity. Your study is valid. You are measuring what you said you will measure, and your study is reliable because you are really getting the results and the consistency that goes with that which you are meant to study. So these are the two very, very important. You can miss the time with validity. In other words, if you say, I'm going to measure the machines, the operability of the machine, I'm going to measure that. And you don't measure the operability of the machine, but you measure the consumption of energy, you miss the target. And if you do that consistently, so you can miss the target and miss it consistently, or you can hit the target and you can hit it consistently, or you can hit it sometime and miss it all the time. So the validity and reliability, how often you miss it, or it can be reliability on how consistent you are. So I have a picture in my mind that you miss the target and you miss it consistently. So it's not valid but reliable. Or you hit it, but you don't hit it repeatedly. So it's valid but not reliable. But it can also be reliable and valid, or not valid and not reliable. So you are not consistent and you are not valid. So that's the study. The study is not valid. You measure it once, it's valid. And if you measure it all the time, it's valid and reliable. So at least that's what you should be targeting. You need to know, what is my target? And if you hit the target, you have to try to hit it consistently. Easier said than done. But obviously, that is just to try to explain for you the concept, the two concepts, reliability and validity. Are there questions or comments that we can engage on right now, ladies and gentlemen, on these two very, very important concepts of reliability and validity, before we just wrap up with the scales of measurement that you will need as you develop your questionnaires or your tools or instrument for collection of data? Any reflection, any comments, any concerns? Please go ahead. It can't be that it's so quiet and so clear that none of you has any reflection, even if it means just complaining, if you have got a complaint. Rose, go ahead.
Thank you, Prof. I'm just asking myself, I'll be using a questionnaire and also collecting data from the instruments directly. They are recording automatically. So how do I prove reliability on the questionnaire?
You will be using a questionnaire and what?
And primary data from the instruments, from the equipment.
What do you mean? You'll be recording the interviews?
No,
mean
I'll be sending online surveys, questionnaires. Yes.
I hear the questionnaire, but I want the other part where you said instrument. A questionnaire, remember, is an instrument.
Sorry, I'm talking the actual equipment. Sorry, when I said instrument, it's not the research instrument, it's the equipment. So the equipment will be collecting the data. I'll be looking at the data that's collected by the equipment, and then also sending the questionnaires to the people that are using this equipment.
What equipment? When you say equipment, what do you mean?
I'm talking the network equipment. I'm looking at the effect that automation and digitalization has had on the telecommunications performance.
Okay.
So I'll be getting views in terms of the effect that it has had. So it's a comparative study where you're asking them before the automation and digitalization and after.
Yes, I'll come to the questionnaire just now. It's just the equipment I want to understand. So when are you sending, when you say the equipment, how, I mean, here I am, I'm your participant. Before the questionnaire, I understand the questionnaire, will come to it. On the equipment, how will it work in collection of data? That's where I need assistance.
I'll be confirming, so I'll look at the actual performance, like comparative before and after. Then the questionnaire will be to confirm that.
The questionnaire is another, you'll be using both the equipment and the questionnaire to collect data.
Yes.
So questionnaire, so basically you are using mixed methods or not?
It's quantitative. So far with my supervisor, it's a proposal. So
Okay.
I'm submitting to him to finalize that portion. But we agreed on the questionnaire. But as I read more, I can compare actually the performance before and the after, because the data is available from the equipment directly. It collects it automatically.
Oh, so you've got an equipment. You've got an equipment that is already sitting with this rich data that you can analyze.
Yes.
So how was the data captured? This is the question I asked Nigo earlier.
It works 24/7. It collects the performance by itself.
Oh, so it's automated.
It's automated, yes.
So let's talk the period. So when you collect the data, Rose, are you limited to a particular time lines or not?
No. As long as the equipment is on, it picks up the data in terms of performance, because there's traffic, there's network traffic passing, and the equipment is monitoring that. So as long as
there's no timeline between the data that you are receiving that you are going to analyze in performance.
No, the only timeline will be when did we digitalize and automate. So before and after, that's the only timeline that it will give us, that you'll be working on.
I see. So you've got, that's the time. That is, remember, it's also important in terms of your limitation of scope, that you need to know how far back you go and how far forward you end, because otherwise it's going to be an unending analysis that you have to compare period. Like, I mean, I don't know when did the digitization starts in that space, but then I would imagine before then and after that is the period that you're looking at, first of all.
Thank you. I'll include that on the link.
So that because it seems like it's like you're comparing the before and the after.
That's correct.
Okay. Now on the questionnaire, what you do is that, remember, with the questionnaire, you need to ask questions that are going to assist you in getting what you are looking for, right?
Yeah.
That's validity. So in other words, if you want to know around digitization and all that, your questions are going to be formulated around that, so that you get the answers that you are looking for in that context. Now, if you ask questions generally, and that I think you're going to get your supervisor and someone who's more a statistician or understanding statistics to help you, because the series of questions that you're going to develop are going to be developed around the areas that you are interested in, isn't it? In other words, you're going to look at what are the issues that you want to look at in comparison for before and after the. So the questions are going to be formulated in such a way that although they may not be as obvious as that, but you will have your yes and your no's, your agrees and your disagrees, because that's where the measurement is going to come in for you. So you're going to develop, we're not talking about design of a question, but when you design a questionnaire, you are now guided by the content of what you are looking for. So for validity, what we are talking about there is that you need to make sure that the questions that you're going to ask, get you into asking the things that you want to get out of them, and you've got an operational definition. So in other words, when you say digitization, people must know what that means, so that you measure that which you say is digitization. If you say machine performance, you need to define what machine performance is, so that when people fill your form, you don't come back to them and say, no, but I didn't mean this kind of equipment, I meant that kind of equipment. Much easier for you to develop a series of those questions, which will then, when answered, they will be able to give you what you are looking for. For example, remember I said, I make an example. If I ask you, how many times have you gone to church in the last 5 years? It might be quantitatively difficult to measure that. But if I ask you, did you go to church last Sunday, yes or no? Which one do you think will be easier to answer?
The last Sunday one.
Rose?
It's last Sunday one.
If I ask you, when last did you go to church? And you'll be able to, if I ask you, did you go to church last Sunday, yes or no? Because it's quantitative, it's closed. So it's either yes or a no. You are able to answer the latter one, right? Because it's much more clearer.
Yes, that's correct. Can you hear me, Prof?
Okay. So that's what you're going to say. Yes, I can. Now I can hear you.
Okay.
Now I can hear you. So you see, this is what we are talking about. Yeah, this is what we are talking about, Rose, when you say make it easier as a question, as a yes or no. Don't ask two questions in one. Ask one question, another question, so that you don't say you have a question like what we normally see when people are interviewed on TV. You listen and realize what then is the question here. So you need to ask one question. If you've got 5, don't lump them in one, so that I know, do you want a yes or no? Do you want to agree or disagree? Agree strongly or disagree strongly? Those are the kind of things that you are going to be assisted with when you develop a questionnaire. But yes, it can be, you can use both for collection of data, because it sounds like you are doing corroboration or you are doing triangulation. I think you're struggling, Rose. If you can hear me, that's fine.
I've got network connection issues, but I can hear you.
Let's just look at now that. Oh, great. Let's see if we can close it quickly for you, so that you can immediately go into the design of the question, whilst you have it. One of the most important things in a questionnaire, of course, or in research, is the scales of measurement and the types, because this one helps you in limiting the data of any phenomenon. So you take the phenomenon and you limit the data, so that you are only going to develop, questions within the scope that you are looking at, so that those data may be interpreted compared to a particular qualitative or quantitative standard. And as I said, it's much easier when you make your questions easy, straightforward, yes or no, because it's quantitative, but also if you want to do qualitative, be clearer and ask questions in such a way that you allow for the person that needs to answer you to really answer. Now, 4 categories: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. The nominal scale, if you go to a situation and you find that you're only dealing with 2 groups of people, say girls and boys, that then becomes nominal. You only have 2, either you're a boy or you're a girl. Now, you notice that sometime back, when you were doing demographic development for your question, say male or female, but now it is no longer becoming nominal. It's almost now becoming ordinal. That are you male, female, you don't want to disclose, for example, or other. Now, already that tells you that the measurement is not nominal. Measurement on gender cannot be nominal. It's now becoming more of, if you like, ordinal. Ordinal scales really is represented by symbols like greater than or smaller than. Now here, you're looking at phenomenon, or using the data or 1. So I've got a choice to make, greater than or lesser than. So it allows us to rank order. For example, you'd say, I have the following, rank them in terms of your order. Is poverty, is unemployment, is inequality, which ones is them as in terms of importance. It then talks to you that this is ordinal, because you're ranking which one is more important to you. And that which is more important to you may not necessarily be important to me in terms of the ranking, if you understand the ordinal measurement. So an example is when you give people questionnaire, you may say, you can classify them as being those who are not schooled, those who have completed, say, primary schooling, those who have identified high school, college, or graduate. So you can say, please indicate which of these describe you better. School, or have you completed primary school, or have you completed high school, college? So you're already creating an ordinal scale of measurement there. On intervals, for example, when you say, we 30 to 40, you've got an interval of 10, or 40 to 50, or 51 to 60, and so on it can go. For example, if you look at the temperature, we know that when you measure temperature, 0 point will be almost like your freezing point, and your 32 will be more of your boiling point. So you may then ask some people to indicate by that interval as to where do you fall in relation to your age. Again, here we can use, for example, a thermometer. 0 means no desk at all if you look at the school, or a minus desk, isn't basically what it does, the ratio. What I want to look, ladies and gentlemen, is as you start working on your instrumentation, also read a little bit more about the scale of measurement. Because you can look at your own question to say, okay, here, when is it? Is it nominal because I'm asking yes or no? Or is it ranking? Or is it interval because I want to look at the interval between the data that I'm to collect? Or so you're going to find a question that makes all the measures. So somebody who's got the statistics understanding to assist you in finalizing this. What we tried to do really in the last days was to try to look at the data collection approaches, the tools, the validity, both internal and external, and the effects thereof, and the scales of measurement, ladies and gentlemen. We try to lump all that together, and we hope you might have had an opportunity to pick up some lessons from there. Thank you very, very much for your engagement.